In such a meeting like this, I usually like to ask what you would like me to talk about and take it from there, or I'll go into something that I think is important. I mean, you came here, you spent some money. What would you like me to discuss? Is there anything particular? Yes, sir. This is about learning. It's not about music necessarily. It's how one learns, which, by the way, in my teaching, I do quite a bit of teaching and I have a lot of materials out there and so forth. And I have, what I say to students is, if you learn how to learn from a teacher, you've got the keys to the kingdom. In other words, the process of learning, especially when you're young, if you can find how you learn and the way your mind works and what reinforces things and what kind of systems you follow, you're probably going to be good for the rest of your life no matter what the material. Now, there's certainly a difference between a young person, as you've been describing, taking lessons at 9, 10, 11 years old, like this young lady here, for example, beginning and then going to music school, maybe really actually getting serious about it more than a hobby. And then somebody who picks it up later in life as, again, either maybe a hobby or maybe as, really wanting to really play and to accomplish. You can't compare the speed of learning from a young person to an older person. A young person learns at an incredible rate. Their degree of change is massive from one day to the next, let alone 1 year to the next. On the other hand, a young person has a lot of distractions. A young person has a lot of other things to learn, like how to have a life, etc., and deal with life and so forth. And the older person who goes into something and tries to learn it has the advantage of not any time wasted, usually. Your 1 hour, now I don't know you and I'm obviously generalizing, but your 1 hour is the equivalent of a young person's 3 hours, by and large, because number one, you have less time left, which is obvious. Number two, amen. we're all gonna, the road will end, but there's also because you know how to organize your time. And you know what's efficient use of time. Because if you're a human being out in society and having lived life, you have to. You can't get by without it. So there are advantages and disadvantages both ways. The main thing I want to say to you, what's your first name? Rick. The main thing, Rick, and this is to everybody, is that, and it's hard in this society especially, but this is a hard one, but it's true. There is no clock on learning music or art. There's nobody standing there going, you're late. Or you only have an hour left, or why didn't you finish this by 4 o'clock? Like the parents would say to you if you're trying to do a task or something. Music is not about a time limit. Of course, we have a culture that puts such great emphasis on youth, and on the new, and on the flash and all that stuff. And of course, that's what we live in. But we have to always separate our culture. And some of it we can certainly do without. But we have to separate that from really what art is about. I mean, if you play what you play at 58 years old, 65 years old, or 33 years old, and you get enjoyment out of it, and you are improving from day to day, and certainly from year to year, then that is really, that should be enough. That's really what this is about. It's not about being as good as the 17-year-old flash in the pan kind of kid. He's got something going, but he also is not. He's a young person. He's not a mature person. I'm sure that if you get up and play, there's going to be something that is going to be reflected from your life, whoever you are, whatever years you've put in the world, that this young person doesn't have. So when I see a kid play, look, I'll tell you exactly. I teach very high-level students at Manhattan School of Music, for example. I mean, worldwide I teach, but Manhattan School of Music, because it's a master's degree, doctoral degree, so I'm getting the cream of the crop. They obviously are spending a lot of money to be there. And they are incredibly talented. The level is so much higher now than it was when I was their age. It's ridiculous. What they know compared to what I knew at 25 years old, I couldn't even compare it. They know all styles. They can handle any kind of music. They're very cool. But they're 25 years old. And when they play, I can hear that. Now, that is what's important to me. The fact that he can really, or she can really burn and do a lot of stuff is very impressive, no question about it. But that's not really what this is about in the end. What this is about is when you get up and play, do you have something to say that is of value to those listening to you, that they go away with a feeling, maybe even more than a feeling. And that usually comes from what your life is about. and you can't hide it. One thing about the music is, one thing about, at least about jazz, you really can't hide. I mean, it's like you close it down, you know, it's like butt naked, you are out there. You cannot hide, everybody knows what you're talking about, and certainly musicians know what you're talking about. And I think that an older person has the maturity and, of course, life experiences that will be reflected in their instrument, which is a trade-off for the young person who has a great head start. And that is the only way you can look at it, in the end. Not much you can do about it because you can't go back. Much as we like to. I mean, I wish I could have learned what they learned. I wish I had me teaching me. Believe me, if I had me teaching me, somebody like me who could explain the things that I can explain, because I can explain things pretty clearly, man. If I had that when I was 18, 19, 20, instead of me just trying to hunt for it by ear and by trial and error and by asking questions to guys who never answered your question, because in those days nobody talked about anything. You know, I mean, they would never say to you, practice this. I mean, they would be very reticent to give away any tricks of the trade, let alone let you into the secret club. It was a subculture, it's the way it was. These days, everybody talks, everybody says it, and some people are very good at it. And I wish I had had that, but you can't go back. You know? Yes, individuality. Because cookie stamp, it's the cookie stamp stuff. They are learning in school, whatever schools, good schools, they're all. The nature of school is group teaching. The nature of group teaching is to find the norm, to find the middle ground. You can't go, Rick, you play C sharp this way, and Miss, you play C sharp this way. I mean, you just couldn't do that in a class. So you'd be there all, the year, and you wouldn't get past 10 minutes. So what happens is the material is organized to be presentable, to be understood, and it makes everybody come out in a certain way. Now, the good of that. The good is the level's high, as I'm saying. The negative, of course, as in anything that is a mass kind of thinking, individuality can be stifled. But one good thing about art is we say cream rises to the top. And if it is somebody who's got something to say, I don't care if you put them in the gulag, they will have something to say and it'll come out. So the good is we're educating more people. The level's higher. Individuality can be stifled because they all come out playing the same licks and the same solos. Everybody studies the same guys because that's the way we teach it. But then if they're really that good and that special, I know they'll find their way. So it works both ways, like everything else. I think that we do not talk about listening enough in teaching and in general. We assume we're listening. Well, of course you got ears and you're listening, and of course we assume that when you're playing, you're listening. This is a gigantic assumption, because the truth is, what are we listening for? And if I take a student and I put a record on and I say, what do you hear? I mean, I don't know if I'm going to get anything past like, saxophone player's good, or sounds nice, or generalities. May be specific, usually to whoever the front line person is, the soloist, then the piano solo. I said, what's the drummer doing? Huh? What do you mean? Well, what's the drummer doing behind the saxophone? What's the relationship between the drummer's beat and the cymbal beat? If it's jazz time, let's say. What kind of comping, if it's piano or guitar, what kind of accompaniment is going on? Are those fourth chords? Are those cluster chords? Can we at least tell that? In other words, without getting into very detailed ear training, I'm not asking somebody to say that's an F to an F sharp and give me a written, write the solo out as it's going along. We don't usually talk about listening to students, and we should, because we have to listen below the surface. And it's an important thing that is not really given regard to. Now, when we play, David, we know that there's a lot of stuff going on to listen to. You have your own instrument that you're playing, and then you have everybody around you that you're playing with. And let's put ourselves in a typical jazz situation, which is where I am most of the time, in front of a small group most of the time. And I get the question, which is, what are you listening for when you play? What are you thinking about? This is a very typical question. Now, the first thing, to be honest with you, is, if there was a machine to measure the amount of thoughts, the sheer number of thoughts that are going on in somebody's brain when they're improvising, I would really like to see this. I'm sure this is happening as we speak somewhere, probably 5 blocks from here, because this is New York, and they probably figured a machine that's going to be able to look in there and check the shit out and see. The brother was here, he was here, like that. Which they're doing. They're working on a cap that you wear. I'm very interested in how the brain works about this, and I know they're in there doing this. But what we know is, from what I can see, is there's so many things going on at once that one of the biggest thing about improvising is learning how to concentrate and to get the distractions away. Because you're thinking about, let's say, how your instrument feels, the reed. I mean, let's just go here. The reed, it feels like, oh, the pad is sticking. I mean, there's about 5, 10, there's a million things right there, not even getting past the music. Then the next is the music. The chord change, if it's chord changes. The mode, the scale, C sharp, F sharp, what is it? What's coming up? There's all that. Then there's like what my brothers and sisters are doing behind me, with me. The piano, the drums, the bass. Boy, he's playing loud. Man, he's dropping the beat. Oh, man, he just played a great idea. God, I wish I could catch it, etc. And then there's what we call life, which is like, who's sitting in front? Will I get paid? I have a stomach ache. We're rushing, whatever. Life. I mean, so when I think about what an improviser has to probably consider in the moment of improvising, it's it's unbelievably vast and quite complicated. But what I try to reinforce to young musician is that what you should be trying to do is not worry about what is coming into your mind. Let it happen, because it's going to be fleeting, whatever it is. And really listen to what you have just played. Now, let me explain that. When you're improvising, you're telling a story. The story is like reading a novel, a book, a chapter. It has its ups and downs. It has its punctuation. It has tension and release, just like I'm talking to you. I'm talking high and low, and I'm using my hands, expression. It has some kind of line to it. Something is going on. The most important thing in art, and certainly in what we do, is tension and release and your use of that. So if I have been playing something, I need to be aware of what I just played so that I can respond to that in the next moment. Let's say, now, what did I just play? I played a falling line, falling intervallically, falling dynamically, da-da, da-da, da-da. I had kind of third type thing, more or less like that. Now, let's say I did that for a minute, which would be nice, to develop it, and I'm in the middle of a blues or something like that. I can't stay there forever. It will wear out its welcome. I need to respond to that. In order to respond to it, I need to realize what I did. I just described what I did to you. How fast can you describe what you played? That's listening. How fast can you say, that's a melodic idea? That's mainly a harmonic idea. Look, at any given moment, given that something's 100%, there's 100% of information. That 100% of information is divided into melody, harmony, if there is, and there's always harmony even if it's not present, rhythm, 3 basic elements of music, and then the other 2 are color, and by color I mean sound. Your sound in relation to the other sound, the sound of the piano and low register, the whole overall ambience, and then this form. And I don't mean form necessarily AABA or blues form, I mean form in this way. I just played this, I need to play this. I played loud, I need to play soft. Any of those 5 things, all those things are happening at the same time. In any given moment, when you listen to something being played, or you play something, one of those 5 things is dominating. One of those is 51%. Probably. If they were all exactly, 20%, that'd be unbelievable. How long could you keep that going? So if I just played what I did, that to me was basically a harmonic intervallic idea. If I know that, and I can define that, remember this is all in fast time, I mean I'm slowing things down monumentally here, but if I can identify that and say, oh, I just played that, I probably need to, after a while, probably need to do something fast, maybe with close intervals, etc. Or if I just played, back to it with something in between. So my point is that when you're listening to yourself play, the most important thing is that you realize where you just were. And of course, again, you don't have the time to do this while you're playing, but when you get fast and experienced and listen enough to music and make these kinds of judgments when you're listening to music, you get quicker in doing them to yourself. That's why listening is so important. That's why trained listening should be done. We should take a class and we should sit and say, what are we hearing now? Now we're just not hearing the tune and everything. What is below the surface? And I think once a listener, a person who wants to play, gets their hearing into that kind of detail, when they're playing, they realize it, and they're able to react to themselves. So that's, I think, the role of listening, which is crucial. I mean, besides obviously listening to yourself, see if you're in tune, if you're in time. I mean, those are the obvious things. I'm talking about a little more deep listening. Well, it's in everything. It's the timing. It's the sound of your voice. It's for a vocalist. It's also physical because it's you can't deny the physicality of a singer. I mean, when I'm playing, I'm behind the horn. I got something to hide behind. A singer gets up. That's the personality. They're talking to everybody in the audience. I don't care if it's 10,000 or 10 people. So there's the drama aspect of that, and that's why a lot of singers take acting classes, and they learn that because they need to. I mean, you're asking me a question that we all want to know, which is how do we take it to the level where it's meaningful, where it goes to a point where it really tells a story, where it affects people on a very high level, and it is a story worth hearing. That's what you're asking me. And it's a little, yes, but it's a little bit like what I said to Rick here in a certain way. It's like, it's when you have something to say that you really feel strong about, it cannot be negated. It has to be heard. And people will get it. Now, I can't tell you that if I play opposite the Rolling Stones, that those people are in the frame of mind to get it, in the mood to get it. I don't think so. Now, I tell you though, if I took a couple of them and could sit in front of me, I probably could do it. But let's just say, for the sake of convenience, we play in front of the right audience, and they are open and ready to go. If somebody really has something to say, I can't believe that an audience doesn't get it. And that means that the performer, to do that, has to absolutely believe in what they do. They must have absolute confidence. You cannot have this little gremlin on your shoulder saying, no good. It's not good enough. You didn't do it right. You're copying somebody else. See, I always talk about this gremlin in relation to composition. Katz asked me about writing. And I always say, the first thing about writing is when you sit down and start to write, don't let this guy over there say it's not good enough and then rip up the paper. Don't worry about it. Just do it. Now, this guy who's here, Super Ego maybe, this little boy here, he's there when you're playing. And what we have to learn is he's not there when we're playing. He's got to be there when we're practicing. When we're practicing, yeah, it's, hey, man, I should execute that better. I'm not really doing it right. Come on, get it right. But when I'm out there in front of people, he's got no business being there. It's not his job. It's the ego. It's the guy called ego is supposed to be here. I mean, Freud in here, but I'm talking about. I'm the guy who's supposed to say, like, I have something to tell you. I think it's important. I'm with a bunch of people who are agreeable with me to present this to you. I expect you to listen. Hopefully you're sitting and listening. And I'm going to do my best to get across what I have to say to you. And I have worked on it. That's the other thing. Now, you can't be like a beginner and go up there and say that because that's false pretense. But if you have worked on it, and you've done your job, and you've done your music, and again, music can't lie. You know when the guy's in tune. You know when the guy's in time. You know when you're singing and it's right. If you're doing that because you've rehearsed and practiced and you've been true to your art, then you have a very good chance of getting that across if you believe in it and if you have confidence in it. To me, that's the next level. That's what is, to me, the next level. That's what separates a very good player, competent, knows their vocabulary, from the artist. That's the difference between craft and art. A craftsman is a person who does something well. A guy who makes a nice chair that's serviceable is a craftsman. This is good. It serves a purpose. Got the speaker on it. I can sit. It didn't collapse. I'm cool. You know what I mean? Okay. But then we go into the museum of Metropolitan Museum. We see chairs from Louis XIV that are like, unbelievably exquisitely designed and unbelievable, incredible like that. Okay, so this is the same chair, same function, and yet it's artistic. So to me, what you're alluding to is the difference between ordinary and very good, and I'm not being negative about it, very good craftsmanship. Cool. But then there's the artist. The artist is one who uses very good craftsmanship to speak about something beyond the craft. Now, is that the spirit? Is that the feeling of, I don't want to go to war anymore? Is that the feeling I love my wife? I mean, that's personal. That's up to you. Whatever it is that makes that happen in you and come across with the fine craft, I think is what you're talking about, which raises it to another level. Singer, flute player, I don't care, bass player, the instrument doesn't matter, because you can spot that in a person. You see that. You see it physically. You can certainly hear it. And when you put the two together in live performance, like we usually do, you can say, well, you know, this person's really, I don't understand what they're saying, but I definitely get the feeling. I can only relate this to you, I'll tell you. When I saw Coltrane, I'm thinking a lot about Coltrane. Well, I'm always thinking about Coltrane, but I'll tell you why, because next week we're doing 4 nights at the Manhattan School of Music on Coltrane. One night, Monday night, I'm doing a lecture overview. Tuesday is a panel with Roy Haynes and Rashid Ali and, you know, some heavies, Jimmy Heath. Wednesday night is the ensemble playing, one of the student ensembles playing Coltrane, and I'm directing. And then Thursday night's the big band playing Coltrane. So it's my whole week. So I'm kind of like getting into it, and I have some homework to do tomorrow, and it's on my mind. But my point is that when I first saw John, it was right on 52nd Street and Broadway. I was 15 years old. And I went with a young lady, my first big date in Manhattan, because we're from Brooklyn. That's like going to Nebraska. You might as well be in Africa or in Japan, because it's like that, even though it's only 40 minutes in the subway. All right. So we came in, and, okay. Now, I had gone to Birdland once with the older guys in the school, the high school, the dance band, the senior 17, 18-year-old cats. So, oh, let's go to Birdland. Oh, yeah. So my mother let me go, parents let me go, and I saw Count Basie, Jerry Mulligan, a Christmas show. It was, well, Birdland, wow, you know, I never saw anything like it. Coke was $1. It was unbelievable. It was 5 cents where I lived. It was $1 here. Couldn't believe it. The women, I had no idea what was happening. Okay, but I loved it. I did like it. And I said, oh, I'll go to Birdland. So we took my first date there. We went to Birdland. And we walk in there, and I have no idea who John Coltrane is. Bill Evans Trio. I have no idea. I'm reading Downbeat. I'm just getting into Downbeat. So I know the name, and it's a picture of him playing soprano saxophone. Oh, that's the guy who plays that instrument. That's the clarinet, or what is that, you know? Okay. I go in, and we hear this set, him playing. I couldn't believe he was playing the same instrument that I have at home, this instrument. First of all, it sounded like he couldn't play it in some ways. He was like things I'd try to do, you know, which, you know, don't always work. But it sounded like to me he was kind of practicing or something. I didn't get it, but it was compelling, and it was very strong. And I went back and back and back. And I saw him until he died, and I saw him anytime I was in New York. And I saw him, you know, I was in school, so I saw him Friday and Saturday nights. If I could, I'd be there. I had no idea what they were playing. I mean, I didn't know much about music, first of all. I certainly didn't know what Coltrane's group was playing. It was very complex. I know a little more now. You know, I've studied it for 40 years, you know. But it was no question this was the real deal. That was for sure. I didn't even know really what jazz was. But I said, whatever these guys are doing, it looks like they really mean it, first of all. Number one. Number two, that's that same instrument I have at home. It's called a tenor saxophone. There's no way that's the same instrument. That's just me being blown out by the way the guy played the instrument. And then number three, of course, after a while, the passion and the sincerity and the feeling that these guys played with, the seriousness in which they had, went at their task. It seemed to me it was just very serious. You know what I mean? I didn't see anybody laughing. Nobody announced anything. Nobody said, now we're going to play. There was not one word ever said. I never heard him say a word. And it really impressed me because I couldn't believe anything could be that strong and that serious and no extra stuff about it. It was just them playing till 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, no matter how many people were there. I was there sometimes at these clubs, Birdland, the Half Note, the Village Vanguard. I mean, there'd be 5 people there sometimes. Okay, a Saturday night, they'd be crowded. And they still played like it was the end of the world. And I said, whatever that is, I want to do that. That's really what happened. I mean, I don't want to be a school teacher. I want to be that. I don't know what that is. I don't even know if I can do it. But I know that means that there's something up there that at such a high level and such a high value that I would like to try to see what that's about. So that comes back to my point, which is I didn't know it, but I could feel it. I was 15, 16 years old. I don't think it could be negated when you have confidence and you're sure of what you're doing. Stylistically, somebody could say, I don't understand what they're doing. But that's really like it's like going into a restaurant and eating something that you never had before and go like, it's a little strange, but you know, it's kind of nice. I'll go back again. You know. I hope that answers your question. I mean, you can't expect, unless they're bitten by the bug, and they're like, you know, which can happen. Look at Tiger Woods. He was practicing at 3 years old. Boom. You know what I mean? You know, yeah, Mozart was certainly in there at 3 years old. All right. I mean, this can happen, but most of us, it doesn't necessarily happen. It doesn't, you know, and that's the way it is. I mean, if you get a good hour or two in for a young person, that's good. And with a young person, the most important thing is to be very specific what they have to practice. See, I'm going to talk differently to the older ones. But with a young person, they have to really know that the teacher, and that's why a teacher's got to be, see, teaching young people is different, it's a certain skill. They have to know that my teacher wants me to do page 1 to page 4, or page 5 to page 6, blah, 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 and it has to be this tempo. You know, the teacher must be extremely clear so that the student is absolutely sure of what to do and completes that every day, like a checklist, like that. Now, as the student matures and gets to like the stuff and hopefully really wants to practice, they become the next level, which we're going to get to, which is they become a little more creative with it, something that they really like, they can stay in there for a long time. Because it's better to have them interested in something than do something by rote at that age. To make an effective practice session, you need to be organized. You need a certain amount of hours for it to be worthwhile. What's a certain amount of hours? For a young person, if they do 2, I am thrilled. A day, with all they have to do in life, if they do 3 on Saturday and Sunday, this is fantastic, I would say. I mean, if they're really inspired, they do more, that's great. That's gravy. For a person that wants to make an advancement, 2 is warming up. I'm sorry. I got to be honest with you. 2, because what I'm about to tell you, 2 is just getting the horn, putting it together, and, you know, stretches. 2 is stretching. That's what it is. 3 is starting to lift weights and start to run or whatever you think. 4 is really getting in there, and 5 is like, we can really make progress. You have to make an assessment of your time. People have lives, you know, they have another life. Making it like a job or a family, obviously. And they can do what they can do. I say, let's be realistic about what you can do every day. Not on the holidays, not when the kids are out of the house, not when your old lady leaves you alone, not what can you really, realistically do every day. Once you say, that, hopefully more than 2, once you say 3, we now have what I call units. A unit is 55 to 59 minutes. Because you're allowed to have air for 1 minute. You could come up to breathe. It means an hour. An hour of time per thing. Metronome is an hour. Phrygian scales and 12 keys for this week is an hour. And the different ways we do it. Learning a tune. Maybe that's that same tune. We'll do that for 5 days so we learn Green Dolphin Street. Those are 3 units. Now, of course, you say, man, but what about piano? What about composing? What about listening? What about repertoire? What is it? You know, yeah. What about all those stuff? What about? You're right. There's a lot of stuff to know. That's true. But we can only do what we can do. If we spread ourselves too thin, we are not going to get something out of it. And if we practice too many things in one day, we're not going to get anything out of it. I say unit, and a unit for convenience is an hour. And if you do that, and you do it consistently, and you have 3 hours, and you can do 3 hours 6 days a week, you will make progress. You'd have to be brain dead not to make progress. You have to make progress. And you know what? Measuring progress is a big thing. Because here's this gremlin again. This little brother or sister is sitting over here saying, you can't play. I can't play. I'm no good. I'll never be good. He is better. He will always be better. Okay, now. This is glass half empty, half full stuff, right? We all know this metaphor for life. It's up to you how you view it, if the glass is half empty or half full. I say, listen to yourself on tape, the gig you just did, or play with a play-along today, and listen to it 3 months from now. You cannot tell me you have not improved in some way. You cannot tell me you haven't improved. If you don't know it, then you're not noticing it. And then we go back to listening, as Dave was talking about, and we'll make you understand. And you now play that F sharp better than you did yesterday. You must admit improvement, even if it's incremental. Because again, older, it's hard. It's incremental. Young person, I mean, she's going to play really different by the time she's 15. It's going to be massive. Probably by the time she's 13. If she's 12, she'll be in a year. It'll be amazing. It's not going to be the same for an adult. It is by fine lines. You got to recognize it. You got to feel good about it. You don't have to feel like King Kong. Oh man, I'm great now. Hey man, wait till they hear me, bro. You know? No, that ain't it. It's like I'm getting better. I can hear it because I'm staying with it. If you do 3 hours to 4 hours in units like this, specific practicing, organized time, obviously, no distractions, no phone, all that stuff, obviously. Hopefully nobody around you who can hear you, because it's really, the truth is, as soon as somebody can hear you, you're kind of performing, it's a drag. But whatever you got to do, and you can do that every day for at least 5 to 6 days a week, you're going to make progress. And it is absolutely true, because you're doing it over and over again. It's habitualizing. What is practicing? Practicing is making something that's not natural, natural. Can we agree to that as a definition? It's making something that I don't do that well, or I can't do it all. Get to where I can lift it up, and you don't think about eating. You don't think about how you hold your fork or how you brush your teeth. It's like that. Look, kids, when you're a baby, you don't even know how to tie your shoes, and suddenly after that you're doing it, you don't even think about it. You don't know how to put your shirt on. You know, put your buttons on is a drag. And then after a while, you don't think about it. You do it 5 things a week. You have a coffee, you're on the phone, and you're watching television, and you're putting your shirt on. By the time you're like 10 years old, you can figure that out. So we're always learning something that wasn't easy to do to become easier. This is life. This is how we learn everything. And in this case, what we're trying to do is make something how I finger something. That's scale, playing in time. I'm trying to make something that's not natural, that I have to work at, become natural. And by doing it over and over again, it is bound to get better. It will continually rise. Now, if you're a compulsive practicer, like somebody like Coltrane was, for example, he was known as a compulsive practicer. This is one of the reasons that he covered so much ground in basically a 12-year period, from 1955 till he died in 1967. Musically, he covered so much ground. He practiced in between sets. He practiced. They said about John, they used to say, if he didn't have the horn around his mouth, around his neck, he was sleeping. There were only 2 Johns. It was either the horn around his neck or he was sleeping. I believe it too, man. I mean, because you couldn't get to that kind of level. Now, not everybody's like that. I play with Miles Davis. Miles Davis did not touch the instrument in between gigs. Didn't touch the instrument. And there could be months when he didn't touch the instrument. There was a 5-year period when he retired, sort of, 75 to 80, when he did not touch the trumpet. He took it out once. He played 3 notes for me. He said, put it down. That's trumpet. You know how hard that is to pick up if you don't play every day? This is like nothing. This is like playing a, whistle. This is compared to the trumpet. The trumpet is hard. This is not hard. This is it. You move the reed, you put your fingers down. I mean, the trumpet is like, it's painful, man. Like oboe, it's painful. It's pain. It's painful. And I would say, how could he do that? How could he get away with that? It'd be Miles Davis. And he sounded good. You know why? Didn't bother him. Didn't bother him. Now, maybe he did practice when he was younger. I'm sure he did. And maybe he had a backlog. But I used to see him do that, and I would say, how could he do that? And then I was getting ready to gig. We go out on tour, and I'd be like, gotta get my reeds together, make sure everything's right. I mean, I'm like out of it for the 3 days prior to the tour. I'm like 20 hours a day, like, oh shit, I gotta be ready. And, I'm out and all that. And, I go to gig, and this guy, the first time he's taking a trumpet out is when we hit the bandstand in front of like, 8,000 people. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's this about? And you know what I realized with him? He didn't get uptight about it. He went on and played. Obviously, he's not going to play terribly. He's Miles Davis. He could play. He's been playing for 30, 40 years by then. But he didn't fret that he couldn't play a high note, let's say. See, the things that you couldn't do because you weren't touching the trumpet, no way you could do it. It didn't bother him. He did it. He missed the note. And who cared? And did he get uptight about it? Absolutely not. And did I go over and say, Miles, you just missed that high D. You haven't been practicing your horn. What a shame. Who's going to, first of all, not just Miles, but who's going to go over and say, who's going to even notice that he missed the D? But of course, what would happen? By the second night, second set, well, certainly by the third night, back on where he was when we left the last tour. Because recall. See, that's the other thing, recall. If you got a certain backlog, you recall. That's why practicing is so important when you're young. Because if you can get it when you're young, you have amazing reservoir of stuff that you can tap on with just a little bit of warm-up. I mean, I can't sit here and play all my scales like I played them when I was practicing, but give me 20 minutes and I think I can get it pretty good. You know what I mean? Because it's there, it's just got to come back. So I think practicing is very important. Younger, the better, is get it going. And organization is the main thing. There's one big problem with jazz. Again, I don't know how many are here for jazz itself, the music itself, but in jazz, we know we got to practice our scales and chords. We have to know all that stuff. What do we do after that? It's a bit of a mystery. What do we practice? Because can you practice what you're going to play? Can I practice what I'm about to play with my band in an hour? And should I be? That spoils the whole thing. I mean, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to go out there with an agenda. That's classical music. That's written out. That's okay for what they do. I'm supposed to, if I'm representing myself in front of you, I'm supposed to go out there and take it on the cuff. Be out there on the tightrope walking around like this, balancing myself with the brothers underneath me, helping me out, playing maybe material I played before, maybe not, whatever. And I'm supposed to be doing that. So I certainly don't want to go out and practice what I, play what I practice. So in jazz, there's a little bit of a problem when it starts to get more advanced about what to practice. That's a different discussion. But right now, from what I'm getting here, I think there's certainly a lot to do. And if you can get 3 hours in a day, you're at least cracking the surface. Does that help you? Help you a little bit? Young ladies, does that help a little bit?
3 hours.
3 hours, you promise, Dad? Promise? 3 hours? Slight increase.
Just a little bit.
Okay, well, good luck, man. Well, those are two giant questions. I mean, the first one is, I can't be too specific. We don't have piano. It's a 2-year course at Manhattan School of Music. Is what my book, Chromatic Approach to Jazz, Melody, and Harmony, is basically how to think outside the box. And it's a 2-year course, and I can do it in 3 days, but I also can do it in 2 years, because that's what we do. So, but I can answer one part of your question, which is how did I get away from it? How did I get into it and all that? I mean, let me put it this way. Again, I go back to my listening experiences. The formative years are when you're young, and what you hear as a teenager is probably what you're going to remember the most. I mean, if you stop a person on the street and ask them what their favorite music is, 99 out of 100 is going to be something they heard when they were probably between 15 to 18 years old. And, that got them, whatever that is, or that particular person, or that kind of music, or whatever. So for me, I was in the 60s, as I've been saying, and with those groups, with Miles' group in the 60s, and with Coltrane's groups, and with a lot of guys, there was a lot of harmonic stretching going on. This was the beginning, not the beginning, but it was really developing playing chromatically. It was starting in the 60s. Pre-60s, we still had, the specter, an incredible specter of Charlie Parker, and all he and his contemporaries laid down. Bud Powell's and the Monks and the Dizzies and all that, Sonny Rollins, etc., even early Coltrane. I mean, it was like so massive what they laid down. It lasted, and that was tonal, mostly tonal, with acceptable passing tones, understood kind of stuff. We understood that when you go from an F to a G, you can go with an F sharp in between, appoggiatura, half-step movement, neighboring tones, all that stuff. Flat nines, plus nines, all that. But then by the time we got to the 60s, and of course 59 is a very pivotal year in the history of jazz for a variety of reasons. It's the recording of giant steps, which in a certain way is the pinnacle of chord change playing. At the same time, a month later, or a month earlier, is kind of blue record with Miles, which is it's not the first time, but it's like the announcement of modal playing. Now we're not going to play on chord changes per se, we're going to play on D minor for 16 bars in that case, let's say the tune So What. And we also had in 1959, down in the Village, Ornette Coleman coming to New York and playing for a month or two at the 5 spot and really upsetting everybody because he had no chords at all. All right? I know that for me, when I looked at the evidence was, here is a solo by Train or Wayne, or me by that time. There's got to be some thinking going on here. I'm sorry. There is the evidence. What are the conclusions? It's a hypothesis. I mean, how can I get to that? I must be going from here to get to there. This can't all be luck. This can't all be any note but C. It can't be that easy. There has to be some thought. So I started to think of all the possible ways you can play off of what a chord is. You can play up a half step, side stepping we call it. You can play the tritone relationship, which Bird did, of course. If I see D minor 7, G 7, man, I go right to A flat minor, D flat 7. Piano player plays D, G, I play A flat, D flat. It's okay, especially in that case. I saw that if you have something down there, I can play. If you play D minor, D Dorian, I can play D Phrygian. I can play this called chord quality, scale quality, change the quality. The giant steps progression that Train played can be put over a D minor 7, G 7, C, which of course he did. And it can be put over it in a way that it doesn't sound just mechanical. So I found 5, 6, 7, 8 ways of handling, I'm saying D minor 7, G. Let's use that as saying diatonic chord changes. And then I realized, wait a minute, now what about when I play on D minor only, like So What, or Impressions, or tunes like that? Well, maybe I can think of other chord changes as if they're being played, but they're not being played. So my basic thing is superimposing something over something. This is what this is all about. If I see what's there on the paper, I see Bye Bye Blackbird, or I see a tune you give me, I see the changes, I go, okay, let me first, of course, play those. You got to walk before you run, so you got to play those, and say, man, I can put this over it, and the clash will be something that I will like. Now I come into the next part of it. What really is important here is you gotta love it. You gotta love the dissonance. You can't back out. You can't say, it's ugly. It's too much. It's too dark. All those words that basically mean fear. Like it's like, gremlin evil. I can't go in there. I must love the dissonance. I must love the half-step grading. You know that grate? I love it. And how do you get to love it? Well, in my case, again, I came up through it, and it was familiar. It's like when I get a guy comes in and he can play really good bebop, and he says, I'd like to play some of the stuff that you guys play. I say, look, the first thing is you got to really want it. Let's go and listen first. Let's listen to it. And then listening isn't just jazz. There's 60s jazz like I've been talking about, but it's Scriabin, it's Stravinsky, it's Bartok. Man, it's Western classical music of the 20th century, because those guys were doing it. It's Schoenberg, it's all those cats, Prokofiev. I mean, those guys were doing it and writing it out. We're up there kind of, fooling around compared to those cats. They're writing it for a 100-piece orchestra. There's another level, So we have to really get ourselves into that music and immerse ourselves in that. Like with Coltrane, we can't stop at So What or Giant Steps. We got to go into impressions, and we got to go past Love Supreme, and we got to go into Ascension, and we got to go into expression. You got to love it. You have to get your ear to say it's okay. Now, if I had a piano here, for example, I always like to do this. I'll play a C major chord. I can't do it on the horn because it won't make sense, but I'll play a C major chord. I'll play a C major 7th, let's say. And I say, okay, C major 7th, which, by the way, wasn't heard too much in the time of Louis Armstrong, Lester Young and so forth. The major 7th was not, it was played, but it wasn't put into voicing, It was a C triad. It was what you got, or you got a C6. Maybe you got a C6-9. Well, so then the major 7 started having Bird started using it, bebop, blah, blah, blah. Then they added the Lydian, the George Russell, blah, blah, blah. Now we had the Lydian scale. Then after a while we added what we call the +5 on the C chord. So on the C chord you had C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C. If you know what I'm talking about, that's called the Lydian augmented. And that now became the new 1 chord. Nice. But now I add D sharp, which is the minor 3rd. I add B flat, which is the dominant 7th, and I add A flat. In other words, I have a 12-note 1 chord. No problem. With a C in the bass. C, if you go home, write this down, go to the piano and do this. Put a C in the bass, foot on the pedal. Left hand, put C major 7th. C, E, G, B. And the right hand, play E flat, minor 11. E flat, G flat, B flat, D flat, F, and A flat. Wonderful C chord. This is the nirvana for me. This is my 1 chord. Now, I can't tell you that was my 1 chord when I started listening like that, because that's a pretty dark sounding chord. But with the C in the bass, because remember the C in the bass means the overtones. C in the bass means it rings, and I can put anything up here, and it was okay with me. So, in answer to your question, first thing is, again, you gotta listen to that music and saturate yourself in it, jazz and non-jazz, in chromatic colors. You have to sit down and experiment with it at the piano. And I often say to guys, even if you don't know what you're doing, just put your fingers down, tape it, go to your horn, play against it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what it is. Oh, it's a C minor, flat 5, flat 14, plus 11. Excuse me. That'll come later. It's like Suzuki, they teach you by ear and then they tell you what it is. Play it. We'll worry about calling it after. You can go to my book to see it called, and then you're going to get confused, get crazy on it. But by then you'll say, oh, I can see his logic, it's okay. In other words, it's something that you can experiment with right away. You can't be afraid to play up a half a step. You have to say, okay. It's okay. How long you stay there is another story. That's now we're talking about tension and release and balance. And of course, just again, like I said before, if I play only in the black notes, it's not going to make sense. I got to come back to the home key. Now, when somebody says, do you think like that when you play? Absolutely not. How could I possibly think like that? I can't get past 1 page of my book thinking like that. I mean, there's no way. So there's always this time lag in music or art that is like between what you learn and start to woodshed and practice and your ability to forget it, to really be free from it. Do you have to think about a C scale now? Is anybody in this room a musician? Absolutely not. You don't have to think about it. But when you first learned the C scale, when she learned the C scale maybe 2 years ago, I'm sure she had to think about boom, 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 oh, it's a D, it's E, I'm sure. But not now. So we are always absorbing something in order to forget it, and it's just a matter of what you want to absorb in order to forget it. Some things take longer to do. But that's really what we're doing here. So I don't think like my book when I play. If I did, it would sound mechanical. It's not what it's about. It's meant to open the ear. It's meant to have you sit down and do exercises, practicing so you get a feel for it, and then go out and play and just use it as you can. That's what it's about. Now your second question is a good one, which is solo performance. What he's asking me is, I guess, about solo performance. I'll tell you a nice story about this. This is a good story. It's good for the tape, too. Steve Lacy, if you know who Steve Lacy was, because he was the king of this instrument, this soprano saxophone. I mean, he was the only one playing it for a long time, and then, of course, Coltrane got it, and from what I understand, through him, from what he told me. And this same night that I'm going to tell you this story, I asked him that question. He said, well, Don Cherry said, listen to Steve, and Steve was playing, and Cherry said, what's that soprano saxophone? I'm getting one of those, whatever. I did a gig, a duo concert with Steve Lacy in this 80s maybe, I don't know, 90s. Church, Florence, Italy. Promoter's dream, right? I knew Steve a little bit, but not personally. Hello, how you doing? Like musicians know, but never really hung out with him. Of course, I love his playing. Loved his playing. He's the guy. So we get to the thing, we have a little espresso into the time. We get in the car to go to the church. It's a church, gigantic church, St. Stephen's Church. Sound check. There's no sound check because we're not using anything, but just to get, and what are we going to play? I have no idea what we're going to play. I brought a couple little melodies. I know his kind of set thing he does, so I figured he'll have a few little heads, a couple melodies. So we're in the car, and we're driving, and I'm in the front, and he's in the back, and he says, doesn't even say, like, what do you want to do? He just says, well, I thought we'd play, you play solo, and then I play solo, and then we'll play together. I said, okay. I never played solo concert. I don't even know solo's a cadenza. Maybe. Now this is the master of solo concerts. He's Mr. Solo Concert. That's what he makes his big nut on, man. I mean, he's like the guy who puts solo concerts on the map in Europe. Right? And I'm going to go up and play opposite him solo. I mean, I'm like completely, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I said, oh, well, but he's the master. And then, when I'm around an older musician, still that way, whatever they say, you don't question it. You might ask what tune you want to play and stuff like that, but you don't, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because I expect that from somebody who's younger than me. That's the way it is. We work it's very traditional in this world. We're still like, if you've been there longer, you got the right to call the tune. That's the way it goes. At least I go along with that. So I'm not going to say, well, Mr. Lacy, you've been playing solo concerts for 25 years. I have never played more than a cadenza, but no problem. I couldn't say that. So there I was. And I did what I did. I don't know what I did. I played for 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't know what I did. I don't know, but he liked it, and he said, I didn't know you played like that. Whatever. Anyway, we became totally friended out after that. And then we went on. He played solo. He played 45 minutes of monk tunes. I don't know why. But anyway, and then we went and we played duo. We had a wonderful time. It was a great night. Okay. But it was my first time thinking about the terrible loneliness of being on stage alone. Now, it's one thing with a piano. After all, it's a big piece of furniture. It's bigger than you. It's massive. It's got 800 years, 600 years of history. It's a piano. And I play enough piano to understand it. There's something there. But man, this, excuse me, or a little whistle or whatever. Okay. And I remember talking to Albert Mangelsdorf, wonderful German trombonist, late Albert Mangelsdorf, who was also a solo concert kind of guy. 3,000 people would come and see him. And I said to him, Albert, what's it like to go out and play in front of 3,000 people alone on a trombone? A trombone, which is something anyway. He said, it's lonely. There's no one to hang with. There's nobody to play with. And when you get back on the side of the stage, there's no cats waiting for you. And there's nobody in the van with you or in the train with you. Like very, obvious things. You think like, and then I realized what he meant. What he was really looking at is like, when you play solo on a horn, you're really alone. There's no harmony. There's no rhythm. There's no rhythm section. You are responsible for everything. You are responsible for melody, harmony, and rhythm, color, and form. And you are exposed like your hand in a hurricane. It's like, take me. You are exposed on all sides. The monsoon is surrounding you. You have no recourse. You have nobody to lean on. You can't say it's the piano player's fault. You can't say the drummer, or you can't say, oh, I think I love that what he's playing. You can't. You have nothing. This is an amazing psychological state. I got to tell you, man, it's scary. And it is the biggest thing about playing solo, let alone what to play. Because you're out there with an instrument that doesn't have harmony, doesn't have rhythm, so you have to somehow paint that picture. It is, though, the other side of it, an incredibly fulfilling challenge because of that. Because you will, if you do it, and if you're serious about it, and if you listen to yourself and listen to the guys who've done it, you will find something to do. And you will fill up the space, and you will fill up the lack of a harmonic instrument, the lack of a rhythmic instrument, and you will then be a better musician for it. Because you have provided what you would have loved to have heard, you see. So for me, playing solo a little bit, I've just done a little bit of it. This record, in fact, that record there that's out there, that Distant Runner, is the only, again, it comes down to it, it's the only solo concert I ever gave. It's about 2 years ago in Switzerland, because I made a solo recording. Now, solo recording is different, it's a one-time event. But this guy called me to do the gig, and I said, oh, man, so I went through this whole thing. I said, well, you know what, I think I'm ready to do it, I don't know how good I did it, but I was ready to do it. But I also used tenor, soprano, flute, played piano, played drums. I made it like a circus. Steve Lacy used to go out and play only soprano. Mangelsdorf played only trombone. That's the next thing I have to deal with. It's a good question, though. Yeah. It's a little bit the solo gig, the solo performance. You are exposed. It's slow, ballad usually slow. You don't have tempo to cover things. You don't have speed to cover things. It's probably soft because everybody's, if it's standard ballad, I'm talking about, everybody's kind of cool. Intonation is crucial. The fuzz in your sound will be heard. The attack will be heard. You know what it's like? Actually, this and this are like when you go into the studio. Now, everybody's going to know this one. The first time you ever heard yourself isolated. You went to a record date, first time you ever did a record. I mean, you could have been 10 years old, you could have been 25, 35, 45 years old. But it's the first time you were in a real studio that had tracks. And you went in, you went, oh, that feels good. You played the tune that you've been playing 100 times. Maybe it's a band you know and you've been playing with. Then when you go into the booth, oh, let's check the sound. Saxophone. And you're playing alone. You don't hear the drums, and you don't hear the piano, and you don't hear the bass. And you hear your sad shit. And you hear that sound. That's what a ballad makes you do. Because what you finally realize is the beginning of a note, the end of a note, the sound of the note, the vibrato or not, how much vibrato, the airiness in the sound, the darkness of the sound, the brightness, everything we talk about with sound, and all those words that we can sit here for an hour and have descriptions of what sound is, all those things come into consideration when you hear yourself play alone or a ballad, or in the studio when you're isolated. And it's the best critique you can ever have. So why I say that I can't tell how somebody plays, of course I'm exaggerating, but what I'm saying is that the other part of a ballad is, of course, corazon. In other words, okay, he can play a lot of stuff. I know that, man. I'll give him that. Can he touch me? With a melody. And even a known melody. I'll even say a ballad. I mean, we're talking jazz here, so a standard. Can he touch me with something that's been played 1,000 million times? Whatever, Body and Soul. A million times, you've heard it a million times from everybody. Can he take that and get to me in the moment on a gig? With all the considerations technical that I'm talking about, but most of all, can he get to me here? With the technical stuff too. I'm looking for both. I'm looking at all that stuff is clear, it sounds good, and he gets to me somehow, he phrases in a way, or she sings it in a way, or whatever that makes me say, yes, amen, I hear you. And I know more about you now than I did when you were playing that fast shit. Because when you play that fast stuff, that's great, I know you practiced. I could say that, I know you practiced. I don't know what it means, but I know you practiced. But when you play that ballad, I think I know a little bit about more who you are. So that's kind of what I meant by knowing fully what a player is. I need to really hear them play something like that, in my mind. Well, to play a ballad, you're fooling around with sacred material there. First of all, especially if it's a known chestnut, a tune that's known. And also with people's emotions. Remember, the normal person, look, I can stop a guy in the middle of the street there on 46th Street. And if I play slow for him, he's going to have much more chance to understand what I'm doing than if I play fast. Is that right? Because fast is, gets a little, can be blinded by science. You know what I mean? They go, oh man, that's great, but I don't understand. It's chaotic. You know how people talk about jazz. Oh, it's all dissonant. It's crazy. I know it's crazy stuff. Yeah, because it's fast and crazy. But if I took that same person and said, okay, it's like, you want to get your mother into jazz, give her Miles playing ballads. Give her Train ballads. Give her Bill Evans, because he's really dark, maybe a little too dark, but give Bill playing ballads. You will get your grandmother's grandmother loving music. She'll say, that's jazz? I never knew that. That's so touching and so sweet. And so, you know what I mean? Because, it's true. I mean, how could you resist Miles playing a ballad? Come on. Or Train on that record. You know what I mean? I mean, no one can resist that. So that is exactly the thing. That's for the layman, the normal person who has no experience in listening to jazz. Give them a ballad, they're definitely going to say, I understand more now. Oh, if that's what jazz is, I'll say I like jazz, at least at the start. So that's why I use that as a kind of judgment. First thing is you got to play ballads, and a lot of people don't, and blah, blah, blah. That's times and whatever. Everybody's playing in 9/8 and 12/15. I mean, you can't count it. We're in a different stage of life now, different, the environment's different. You can only do it by playing ballads. You got to play one. I mean, you should play one every set. You really should play one every set. It should be the tune next to the last tune usually, because the last tune will be the flag waver. And by then, the people that are there are there. They're there for you. They already sat through 45 minutes, an hour. They're ready for you to say, okay, now, can we all cool out? Boom. You know what I mean? Let's see. Now you made me think about it. See? So I had the little gremlin over here. Yes. Playing the saxophone is no different than speaking and singing. It's an extension of your vocal cords, period. I mean, you could almost say, done, finished, thank you, here's $50, go home. All right. It's $25 then. All right. Now, that little statement, which is so innocent and so obviously it's very simple, is wrought with amazing amount of difficulties because of the nature of the human beast, which is to create problems by trying too hard, by stressing, by doing things that impede the naturalness of the process, which Joe was referring to. I'll give you one very good example. It's obvious anybody can relate to this. If I'm talking in a microphone or whatever, if I'm a speaker and I speak to you, now forget that I'm in front of you and it's pretty out there because I'm talking to Hashu, but let's say there was a person there. Listen to my voice like this and my voice like this. All right? I mean, why would I do that and then try to be clear in enunciation? Because I'm putting pressure on my vocal cords. So I certainly wouldn't do that. So that's obvious. So the first thing is, obviously, if you're going to play, this, whichever saxophone. I mean, if you can play like this, I mean, just listen to my voice. And I'm not putting it on now. This is the way my voice sounds by me doing this. How can I get freedom of my larynx and my throat? It's constricted. So, of course, the first thing is natural position, which is basically not, it doesn't have to be stiff. It's just conversational. Just just clear. So that was the first thing. Then the next thing, of course, it goes more into like breathing and all that. His thing on breathing, I'm giving you like a complete condensed version, which actually is very interesting. I am doing for Jamie Aebersold now, one of my students, a condensed version of developing a personal sound. And it'll be literally condensed. It'll be this size that you can carry in your shirt pocket because Jamie wants to make these little booklets available. Here's the couple now. Jerry Coca has one on scales, and Dan Hurley has one, so that a student could actually have it with them and carry it and like refer to it. So this is the condensed version. The breathing situation is most of us, the natural breathing that we all use, if we're talking on the street or talking to your friend and ordering a cup of coffee, we use about 60% of our capacity. That's about, that's what you need to say hello. You don't need more than that. Unless you're an athlete, a public speaker, or an actor, or a woodwind player. Now we got to get that extra, we look for the extra 40%. You're not going to get it. You look for about another 10 to 20%. And the way we get that is by breathing down in the deeper part of the well. Now most of us don't have to do that in order to have normal daily life. I can speak to you right now. I'm speaking to you absolutely from my chest. Doesn't matter. I'm getting across my point. I don't need to have a full breath to do this. But in order to play or sing or do something that involves the breathing apparatus, I need to get the air to go down to the bottom of the well so that it fills up space, so there's more air capacity. So there's that three-part breathing process. 1, 2, 3. Now, when I play, am I going to do that? Not all the time, but it's there for me. It's ready for me when needed. And it's there to reinforce especially the high notes. Without it, with it, anybody hear the difference? You hear the difference in the second one? Because I have more of a reservoir, more air supporting the sound. And that was just a matter of me putting more air down here instead of just up here. So that's another aspect of the sound thing. And then the most important thing is, his most important thing, I think, was what goes on at the reed. We have a tendency to want to kill this goddamn piece of reed. We want to attack this thing. We want to, we want to bite and chew and do everything because we want to play so badly. We just have so much to say. It's true, man. We have so much that we want to get out. Hi, Vic. We have so much that we want to get out that we're tense. And we bite on the sides of the reed. We bite up, bite down. We put our lip like this. And what is the reed supposed to do? Vibrate. I think we're going to have a little trouble if we're like this and trying to vibrate the reed. This is just common sense. So you say, oh, I understand that, man. Of course, the reed has to vibrate. I have to let it allow freedom. It has to be loose. Doing it's another matter. If I were to go around and look at embouchures, 9 out of 10, you're putting way too much pressure at the reed. Equal pressure, there's no pressure. There's no pressure. It's not pressure. It's chewing. It's just like, it's a baby, when you put your finger in a baby's mouth and they do the sucking response. That's as much pressure as you need. That's about like an ounce of pressure. You don't need pressure. Now, if I want pressure because I want a color, Okay, that's a color. I'm looking for something. That's all right. Anything in the service of art, I can break all the rules. But in general, if I'm blowing, I should have this thing being relaxed. The other thing is the lower lip. The lower lip is folded over. I can play. With the saxophone, you can play anyhow, anyway. But if I let my lip cover the teeth and be more out, I have much looser feeling up here. It enables the larynx to operate, to do what it does. Look, what's going on is exactly what you do when you sing. I am getting pitch. How am I getting pitch? Am I taking something and doing this? Am I moving something? I don't know what I'm doing. I know that I'm hearing ba-la. I'm hearing that message that I have to pre-hear it. It's going to the brain. The brain is saying, oh, you hear that sound? How do you get that sound? That sound is produced by the vocal cords, which are right behind the Adam's apple in the voice box, around the laryngeal area, vibrating in some way. What way? I don't know what way. I don't know what way. I know I hear it. I don't know, I don't know what's going on compared to, something's going on that makes it happen. Obviously, because you can hear it. I don't care really about it. I just want to know it's happening, and I want to not impede it by doing this, or having so tight up here that everything I do here has no chance to come out. Yeah, you can see. You tell them, what do you see moving here as I go up and down, because you're so close. Now, watch this. I mean, you can play, but you're killing yourself. You're working so hard. You're efforting. You're putting all kinds of tensions on something that's supposed to be a relaxed, natural motion. So that is the main thrust of that book. The whole book, and Joe's whole thing was how to reinforce that through exercises. Mouthpiece alone, playing a scale on a mouthpiece. I should be able to get music out of this piece of wild duck. Besides that, or even a melody. I don't know. Name a melody. Not too hard now. Sometimes I get guys who say, play jazz.
Twinkle,
Twinkle, twinkle. Twinkle, twinkle. She's being really kind. She's being so nice to me. I mean, in the end, anything within an octave, actually, you can add a note or two, you can get about a tenth. You sort of should be able to play on here. Because what I'm doing here is the basis of playing the saxophone. I'm controlling the pitch by my larynx vibrating at the pitch that I'm hearing up here, allowing the reed to follow the way it's supposed to follow. And there's no fingers here. Of course, it's not a beautiful sound. It's not, I'm not going to go out and make an opera with this, but this is going to be, this is the principle. Oh, you dig? Oh, yeah, very good. That's good, man. I like that. I like that. Yeah. That's the first thing. And then the other thing that was important, just to conclude this little thing, is the overtone series and using the overtones. Because if you play according to the overtone series and you play the fundamental, in this case I'll play low B flat, I should be able to produce the overtones without any change of fingerings by doing it in my larynx, by hearing it in my head. So I'm looking for, all right? And the next one would be, etc., etc., etc. Ability to control off of the fundamental, the overtone series, means that I'm doing it here, because I'm not doing it here, obviously. So that means I'm doing it right. I'm doing it in here, just like singing it. Ba, 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 So that is and then of course there's like 15 exercises in the book about this and how to use it, but this is the essence of what the saxophone's about. And this is soprano, tenor, it doesn't matter. Obviously when you get to soprano it gets a little more difficult because of the smallness of the chamber and everything's very sensitive because you're just working with such a little space. But the principle's the same. I don't care if you go from baritone up to saxello, whatever, sopranino. It's all in here with a little bit of motion here, just enough to cover and uncover the reed. With good breathing, everything's fine. Now, you would imagine this is so easy. How come it's so difficult to do? Because, I'll tell you the truth, this is what Joe said. You know, I mean, he was very adamant about this. He said, because most books and most teachers make kids crazy right from the start. You got to open your throat, you got to pick your cheeks, you got to puff your thing, you got to boom, 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 you got to, gotta. And what happens is, by the time the kid is like 18 or something, 16, and playing for 3 years, they're like a walking projection of tensions. It's like making somebody have anxiety. He says, if they just let the kid do what's natural, which is just put the thing in there, nice relaxed lip, everything's cool, work on the overtones is a way of doing it, breathe in a natural way, kids know about that because they breathe like that when they're babies, get them the way to breathe, it's going to be fine, they're going to relax, and there'll be time left over for creativity. See, Joe's point was this, if you have tensions, how can you play music? Whatever music, rock and roll, show music, go to play in a Broadway pit band, jazz, classical. How can you approach music and think and have it in your ear and think about aesthetics when you're worried about your teeth and your lip and and whether you got the right, shape to your mouth and everything? It's all propaganda is what he was saying. So that was his thing. And he was very, very tough on and any of the teachers who did that, he said, that teacher is misguiding that young person and making it much more difficult for them to get out what's in their ear and heart. The real exercise is what we call the matching, which is I'm going to play the real B flat. I am looking for that sound. Listen to this B flat. And listen to this B flat. What's wrong? Pitch isn't right. The color's not right. And especially when you go up here. Let's try high D. High D. Very hard note. Very hard note to get a sound that's not piercing. What is it? Listen to that D. I have a chance to match my actual fingering to the overtone. This is the practice. This is a 20-minute a day, forever practicing, matching exercises in the book. It is about taking the overtone, hitting the fundamental, hitting the overtone, going to the natural or real fingering for that note, and matching pitch and sound. Timbre, sonority, color, whatever word you like. Because that is using, listen to this, listen. And listen to this D. You can't even hear it because the air is gone from here. So I'm talking about a tube that vibrates on the low notes. How can I make it feel like these notes are in these notes? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make up for the fact that acoustically an instrument is gone. It's gone. What can I do? But I'm trying to make up for it by having the presence in here and the sound and the color. And you can get closer. You can never get it perfect. I can never get a D sound as good as the D off a B flat, but I can get it pretty close. Now I remember one day, this was Joe's lesson, it was always the same lesson, and I tell you, I was 16, 17 when I first went to him. I had a neighborhood teacher first, Brooklyn, little neighborhood school, mother, father, brother, the son taught, it was very good. He books and reading, I was cool, but I never said a word about sound, just slapped a mouthpiece on, I don't know what I did. So I said, Mom, Dad, I got to get a little bit, got to go up a little bit. Okay, phone book, went to phone book. Anyway, finally found Joe Allen. I go to Joe Allen, who's, the guru of saxophone teachers, taught everybody, taught Train, taught Stan Getz, he's the cat, and all the classical, he teaches at Juilliard and everything. This is the 60s, right? He gives me this lesson over and over again about the overtones, and he takes out the book, Gray's Anatomy, he's showing me the larynx, and the book, what I have in my book, the diagrams, how it operates, and opera singers, everything. So, this is the best teacher in the world? What the hell's going on here? He's not talking about anything but this overtone stuff. I'm thinking I'm going to go in there and, burn, do books and stuff, and things, I'm looking for things, and he's going like, go home, just do the first overtone for the next week. Huh? Okay. Now, finally, after studying with him a couple of years and going back to him over and over again and back to him for the book, and I've just been re-listening to the tapes because I'm writing that little condensed version. He's great. One day, listening to Coltrane, it just came clear. I think I was already 24, 25. I was already playing on the scene and everything. It became clear what he meant. Because especially Coltrane, had great control of the left hand G and up, and especially the palm keys. I don't mean control, I meant the sound. It was a full sound, and he laid up there. You know he played a lot up there. You listen to Sonny Rollins, he don't play that much up there. I said, that's it. The overtone sound, that's what Train has in that register. That's that sound that Joe's talking about. I can hear the bottom in his side D. And it was like, I swear to God, it was like the light went on. And I've been listening to this guy Train for 10 years, for 20 years already. And suddenly the light went on. I said, this is what Joe meant by the overtone exercise. I finally understand the principle. So simple, so basic, Zen stuff as usual. Simple is everything. And like I finally saw in the simplicity, the complexity, back to the simplicity. And that's what made me understand that. So the matching is the way we do this. Yeah. Especially a soprano, which is very problematic. Okay, equipment. I use, these are Kyle Worth saxophones, which I have been using for years. I like them very much. But I'll tell you, on the road, I get horn de jour. I do not carry horns on the road. I can hardly carry myself, number one. Number two, with security, you have no idea what's going on, or you do. If you do, you know what I'm talking about. Forget about it. You don't know if they're going to take that horn and put it underneath. Oh, we take horns, baloney. You don't know. These days, there are no rules anymore. If there's a rule, it doesn't exist. If somebody doesn't like the way you smiled, sorry, you can't go on with that. Sorry, it's too big. It's 22 inches, longer than 22 inches, which it is. It says 22 inches there, sir. We'll have to put it underneath. Underneath? If you have a soft case, forget it. If you have a hard case, forget it. You'll never see it again. And it'll end up in Oshkosh and you'll be in Chicago. Forget about it. All right. So I use horns everywhere. I'm not proud of it, but I am in a way, because you know what it means? I take these two things, mouthpieces, now I'm actually dealing with some new, different mouthpieces. What does a piano player do? What does a poor piano player do his whole life? Unless you're Vladimir Horowitz or Keith Jarrett or something like that. Yeah, sure you can get $10,000 pianos. You're making $100,000. No kidding. You know what I mean? If you're a normal like us, you're not going to get a piano brought in by Steinway. So you got to play the piano, and that's an action, man. You got to get used to it. They don't even have a mouthpiece. So I say this is the least of my worries. So as far as equipment goes, this equipment, before I talk about reeds and mouthpieces, this equipment, I think you get what feels good, what sounds good. Certainly there are stylistic differences, obviously, between a Selmer and a Kyle-Worth and a Yamaha and Yanagazawa and a Bogani. There are differences because of the brass and the metal, but they are insignificant differences given that you're the guy controlling it. See, this thing with instruments and with equipment, the one thing I'll say, depending on what level you're at here, it's important that you at least understand what I say about this. I spent a lot of money, because money in those days was not like it is now. Mouthpieces are hundreds now, then it was in the 50s and to 100. Reeds were like, a box of reeds was $5. Now it's 2 reeds are $5. So I can't talk about the proportion. But I bought reeds and mouthpieces, necks. I said, no, it's not right. I got to get, a lot of energy. Saxophone has a lot of energy put into equipment. We do a lot, not like a drummer, but we're up in that class almost. And it's just, look at it, it's a simple instrument. But we got the reed, the mouthpiece, the ligature, got the neck, and you got the horn. And you got the strap. It's a whole business. The guy's got it upstairs, right? That's the business. Equipment. You are the person controlling the equipment. Excuse me. If the car drives and is not working right mechanically, that's one thing. If it's working mechanically right, it's you driving the car. The car is not driving itself. So I say you should be able to play any instrument. If you have the principles right about what goes on up here and in here, what we just described in short, you should be cool. That's number one. Now, with mouthpieces and reed, there are certainly differences in mouthpieces based on material, obviously rubber, hard rubber, glass, resin, plastic, all kinds of stuff. There are certainly differences probably in reeds in some sense of the way they're measured, because Rico says 3 when it's equal to a 5 Van Doren or something like that. It's the same piece of wood. Some of them get it from a better piece. It's like wine. You got a good year, a good sun, and you got the good land, you're going to have a good reed. That's what it comes down to. You should get a mouthpiece that feels good and comes to it somewhere close to what you hear in your inner ear. But I just don't think it's good to get obsessed by this, because this becomes a bad carpenter blames his tools. And it's not the tools. Now, I tell you why I use plastic to answer your question. It was 1980, 81. I was sitting in the sax section. I had Lee Konitz, who's coming here in a month actually to do this thing. I had Lee Konitz over here and John Stubblefield, who just passed, next to me. And they both had these gray reeds on. I never saw a gray reed. I said, what's that, man? He said, those are the Barry synthetic reeds. You should try it. Well, Lee Konitz says, try it. I'm going to try it. Shit, you know? So I tried it, and it was right away good on the soprano or tenor. I forget. One was good, and one it took a while. I called the guy up. What a pleasure. No change, no adjustment, every day the same. I played the same reed for 10 years. You could play it. I mean, in theory. So I did. Because you know what? I didn't want to get on a gig and worry about reeds and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I knew how to fix reeds and everything because I took reed making lessons. Me and Mike Brecker took reed lessons from the same guy. And Joe used to fix reeds. Half of Joe's lesson would be the last 15 minutes. He'd say, give me that reed. You know, he'd say, come on, I'll show you how to do it. You know, and he would fix it. He would make a reed play that couldn't play. It was a pleasure to have plastic reeds. And I did it from 1981 till late 90s. I did. And then I was in Japan. And the guy who makes these reeds, Superior reeds, they're available upstairs, Tom Alexander, he said, Lieb, I'm telling you, you would do better if you had wood reeds. I said, Tom, you know, he said, go back and look again. Re-look. I took his advice, and of course, he gave me reeds, and he helped me get the right reed and the right kind of strength. So now I'm back on wood reeds. I do a little bit of preparation, very little. I basically just take it out and slap it on and make it play. I tell you, now it means much less to me than it ever did. So my word on reeds, mouthpieces, and instruments is, yes, it should get something you like. It should be something that feels good, but do not obsess about it. That is not the reason that you don't sound good. That's not the reason. Believe me, it's not the reason. Now practicing, just to go a little more in detail. You are responsible for certain calisthenics. You've got to do certain things on an instrument. Piano player has to do Czerny and Hanon and stuff like that. Trumpet has to do Arbon. We have certain things that we have to do. We have to warm up the instrument. We have to do the equivalent of long tones, overtone exercise. This mouthpiece alone, I say that's the first half hour to 40 minutes of practicing, especially for a young person. It's important if you have that kind of time. You got to get into the instrument, get the air flowing. That's number one. The next thing you're responsible for is obviously depending on what music you're going. I mean, if it's classical music, this is not necessary because most classical players don't even know what a scale is, even though they're playing them all day. But for us over here on the left side of the tracks, we need to know what a C Dorian scale is and be able to play it. So the next part of your practice has to be dedicated to vocabulary, learning the language. You must be able to speak from A to Z, and it's memorization. There's no magic in learning scales and chords and arpeggios. You do not have to be gifted. You do not have to be special. You just have to say, I'm going to do a little bit a day, and in a couple months, I'll have these keys down. There's no talent involved with learning scales. It's like reading. You really can learn to read if you're taught correctly. We all learned Dick and Jane, or at least we did, and you learn to read. This is what that's about. It's vocabulary. It's memorization of scales and chords and all that. That's the second area. That's the second hour, if you're at that stage. Then, of course, we come into that third hour, where we go back to the conversation I had earlier, depending on your weaknesses, what you need. If it's reading, you need books with reading. If it's finger stuff, you're slow, you just don't really flow. You need books that make you go, flow, you know, the scales from beginning to end, exercises, you just read them, do them hour a day, do them for a couple of months, and you get your fingers working with your mind, with your eye. That's that. If you're reading good and all that's good, then maybe the time is better spent in learning tunes. Take a play-along out, get 2 or 3 tunes down, play them with the thing, play them by ear, look at the bass line, look at the melody, don't look at it, do look at it. After a couple of days, you should be able to know the tune by heart. You now added a tune to your repertoire, you go to a jam session, you got a chance to play a tune, all right? Then there comes a stage where things get a little deeper, you got to learn piano. Everybody is responsible to know a certain minimum amount of piano if you call yourself a musician. A minimum amount of piano, minimum. Ability to at least know what a chord is and be able to voice something and be able to read basically, maybe not flowing like this, but to be able to do that. So that's going to take a certain amount of time at some point of your life, all right? Rhythm is another thing. We didn't even get to it, but rhythm is, of course, if it's jazz, learning jazz rhythm, we do. The main thing I do is, there's a long rap on this on my website, and there's a DVD available about it, transcribing, playing with somebody. Exactly. You take Sonny Rollins and you transcribe it, you sing the solo, you do it by ear, you learn to play along with it, you write it out, you analyze it like they analyze Beethoven's Fifth. I mean, themes, variations, what chord did he use, why did he use an F natural, what was he thinking? I don't know what he was thinking, but I can guess what he was thinking. Get the brain working, so that's going like that. Transcribing is the only way I know to get the nuances down. Look, this is the deal. Jazz rhythm. Oh, it's dry in here, isn't it? All right, let's go over there. It's so dry in here. I mean, we don't play it like. We put that little lilt to it, right? Now, what goes into that is the way I'm playing my eighth notes, but a lot of nuances. The attack, the amount of space between the notes, the nuance, the exaggeration, the feel of the rhythm. These are all expressive devices. You can't learn this from a book. You can only learn this by copying somebody. How is somebody going to analyze this? I mean, you can write those notes out. They'll be on paper. They'll be fine. How are you going to sound like those notes sounded? You can only do that by copying the way I spoke. It's like learning a language. You learn French in high school, and then you go to Paris, and you say, "S'il vous plaît, café," and they go, "What?" And they're not too nice over there. You know what I'm saying? They go like, "Huh?" They look at you like, they'll bring you what they want, is what they're going to do. They'll bring you probably a cafe, but if you order tea and you said it like that, they're going to say, "Cafe, tough luck, here it is." Why? Because you don't know the way it sounds. So when you go to Paris or you go to Spain or you learn German and you learn a language, you go to that place, and after 6 months, I got the accent. You watch television, you hear the waiter, you talk to the lady, you get the thing going. Oh, suddenly I got a little bit of the lilt, and now you go and order coffee, they say, "Oh, you speak a little bit of French, it's cool, man, you're cool." You know what I mean? It's the same here. How do you get this nuance and language down? You can't learn it from a book. I can learn high school French, college French. I can learn the teacher. She pronounces it beautifully. I can copy her. But until I'm in the real world and hear it around me, how am I going to have the vibe and the feeling of it? It's the same with this. I can give you a solo right now, the best solo, perfect notes, fantastic. You play the notes, how come it's not going to sound right? Because of the nuances. And the nuances are articulation and feel and bending notes and vibrato, all that stuff that I'm doing that you can't talk about. I mean, that you can't describe. I mean, we can try, but... I mean, just the way I'm talking. You can't know that until you copy somebody who does it. So the transcription process is the most important thing I know about for learning jazz, because it gives you an inside track into the way someone speaks. Now, the someone should be a good model. And we got enough of those on record to know who they are. Once you learn how the language is spoken, you are equipped and ready to be your own person. You got to know what came before. You got to know the syntax, the accent, the way it was said, for you, in order for you to say, "I know that, I'm ready to say it my way now." When you're ready to say it your way, it'll be validated by the fact that you have been able to say it so many other ways. That is part of what we expect in jazz. I get up, this gentleman asked me about, that one thing I said years ago, judgment is reserved until I heard somebody playing a ballad. I need to hear somebody playing a ballad and time. Time. That's time. I need to hear them play time. I need to know that they can play time. If I have a student walk in and it sounds like that's when I start. Okay, here's eighth notes. Let's transcribe. Let's start with Dexter Gordon. Somebody nice and simple. Miles Davis early. Kind of Blue record is very nice. Freddie Freeloader's a good tune to start with. Let's start basic. We're not going into the 70s. We're not going to play like your idol now, who you're going to see play tonight at the Village Vanguard. No, we're going to look at the fathers, not the sons, first of all. Okay? And when we go back to the fathers, because this music has a history and a legacy, and we go back and we see, this is where it started, this is where the guy got it from, and we copy it. We have authenticated ourselves. We have validated ourselves. We've gotten it from the horse's mouth, so to say, and now we're ready to say, I think I have an understanding of what this music is based on. Now I feel like playing this way. Okay, man, go right ahead. But at least I have a sense that you have a foundation. And the foundation is the rhythm and the sound. That your sound has color and nuance to it. That you can project a sound that has changes. You should be able to say to me 5 different ways of playing an A natural. Foggy, bright, dark, wispy, airy. Or, shall we say, angry, lovingly, resentfully, and prettily. Huh? Or shall we say red, green, orange, and black? Or shall we say square, parallelogram, rectangle, and squiggles? Hey man, you call what you want. I want to hear you play that A natural 4 to 6 to 8 different ways in the context of a line. Nuance-wise, shape-wise, color-wise. Because if you could tell me that, then you got some expression, you got a chance for expressiveness. I'm going to be able to listen to you and say, yeah man, you're telling me a story that's keeping me interested. Because if you play the same color all the time, what's interesting about that? Even if it's great. It's not changing. I need variety. Variety of sound and color, time feel, and of course basic technique. And the ballad is just an exaggeration of these things. That's what you're looking for. So those are the kind of things that I think are important to practice. That's the most important. The transcription thing is the most important thing at a certain stage. And once you do the transcription thing, you never have to do it again. Because you're done copying. Copying and imitating is only a stage. It's like learning to walk, ride a bike. A kid learns to ride a bike. She watches the father puts her on the bike. He holds her, blah, blah, blah. She falls, blah, blah, blah. Once it's done, she'll never even look back again. She don't need him to ride a bike. This is what we do. You've got to learn how to do it like somebody did it, and then you're finished. And then after that, it's robbery. We don't do that. We now look for artistic honesty. That's another discussion. Yes, sir. Are we done? I hope you stay for the gig. Thank you for coming. All the best to you.